protein transition, you have really a shift from a more animal-based diet into a more plant-based diet.
That's a difficult question because I'm not really sure if we can really distinguish a protein transition or an energy transition.
As a consumer, the protein transition is something you can directly have influence on.
We all know what energy transition means. There are talks about it in politics and in the media. And we've been benefiting from various programs stimulating transition to more sustainable energy sources. Like, for example, solar panels and electric cars. And Stacy, how do you define the protein transition? What is it actually?
Yeah, great question. So when we talk about the protein transition, we're actually talking about a shift in two things. One on the consumption side, so returning to a more balanced diet, especially here in Western Europe, as in many other wealthy countries, we see that we've gotten a little bit out of balance and we're over-consuming on the animal side. So getting our diets back in balance, but also on the production side, on the way we are producing and using and growing our proteins, we think there's a lot of room to improve to become more sustainable.
And you find it's very important for our well-being and the planet, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are more drivers for a protein transition, but I think I'll stick to two today. So one that's very important, what I already hinted at, is the sustainability picture. If we want to achieve our sustainable development goals and we want to reduce the greenhouse gas footprint of our food systems, looking at protein is a very important lens to be able to make that reduction, and changing the way we produce proteins can have a tremendous impact. On the other hand, when we look at sort of equitability, the way we're sharing our food, we can see that there's also an increasing demand for proteins. We forecast a 30 to 50% growth in demand for proteins through 2050. And right now we see there's a coexistence of overconsumption in some regions of the world and a scarcity in others. So there's definitely a need to sort of address that by the way we are producing and sharing our proteins.
Okay, thank you very much. Here with me today online we have Specht and Muilwijk. Hi guys.
Hello.
Hi Liz, hi Jos. Liz, can you please introduce yourself and your company?
Absolutely. I'm the Director of Science and Technology at the Good Food Institute, which is a nonprofit organization that works with policymakers, industry leaders, and also research scientists to accelerate the field of alternative proteins.
Thank you very much. And Jos?
Yeah, hi, Jos Muilwijk. I'm a Category Director for Savory Foods for IFF. And IFF is one of the leading producers and creators of taste ingredients for the food and beverage industry. Well established, long established, and we have been active in plant-based products for more than a decade.
Okay, thank you very much. Liz and Jos, we've asked two experts of the Wageningen University, Louisa and Sander, to react to the same statements. And now we're going to look at their answers. And I would like you to reply on those answers.
I believe that both the protein as well as the energy transition are both urgent, and they both require deep changes in our supply chain. They also require an inclusive approach where we address the whole production chain. In the protein transition, you have really a shift from a more animal-based diet into a more plant-based diet. While in the energy transition, you have a shift from fossil into more renewable and sustainable resources. I am not sure whether which one will reach quicker the transition, but while in the energy transition we have started earlier, in the protein transition we have less players in the supply chain.
As a consumer, the protein transition is something you can directly have influence on. If you have a power plug in the wall for electricity, you don't know what type of electricity that is being used for that. But the protein you put in your mouth, that is the one that you can change directly.
Our experts seem to point out, although that energy and protein transition have many similarities, that later one is easier to achieve than the other because of there are less players in the chain. What do you think about it?
I think I agree that there's been a really long track record of public government investment into alternative energy, and that's what's brought the sector and technologies like solar and wind to the point that they are commercially attractive and now can garner private investment. We've seen in alternative proteins that there is already some commercial traction and more of it every year on the private investment front. But there is also still room for open access public research funding to really build that foundation of knowledge and continue to make this attractive area for continued investment that is really being driven by that consumer lens here.
Okay. And Jos?
I think we should not underestimate how many players in the chain are involved in plant-based products. From ingredient suppliers, from producers of the plant-based protein, of the manufacturers of the textured product to the food manufacturer. So there are a lot of elements in the chain. But there is a major difference is that plant-based proteins and proteins are obviously making a bigger growth and a quicker growth because consumers are much more involved. They can pull it through. Right. So, and that is, I think, a major difference for energy, because I don't really think that a consumer is really as intrigued as in plant-based products with who is the supplier, where the electricity and where the fuel is coming from. It is much more behind them or in the chain where that difference is going to be made. Where for plant-based products, the consumers are in charge, because if we don't offer them a good product, they won't buy. So the more products are tailored to their cultural fit, to their food behavior, to everything that fits with their consumption pattern, the more it will be accepted, and the quicker the transition will take place.
So you see more opportunities for protein transition?
I think it's proven, right? I think if you see how quickly these new products and this plant-based products are being picked up by consumers, that from the moment that the acceptance rate went on or improved and the affordability was better, that is obviously proving the opportunity.
Okay. And do you also see some problems, Liz?
The biggest challenge I see is the ability of the plant-based industry to scale as quickly as demand is scaling. That's where we've seen the bottlenecks at present, is that there's not enough manufacturing capacity out there, and frankly, not a lot of innovation yet around manufacturing techniques and processes. So that currently is a limitation for companies being able to grow as quickly as the market would dictate.
Okay.
I agree with you. That is a main challenge, and there are new proteins under development, but they're not at scale yet. Not at the scale, for example, as the traditional soy products and now the upcoming pea products. It's not there yet, but that is obviously what the future should bring to us. And we have to make sure that we use the time in between as efficient as possible to immediately come with good formulated, well formulated products based on the new proteins that are under development.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to add something to react to this?
Yeah, one thing I can add is I absolutely agree with what Liz and Jos have said, that we're speaking to consumers with the taste of these products, and that the improvements that we're making there is probably part of the reason why we're seeing the acceleration and uptake. I do want to say I still think that that we're not there yet. The products that are available to us are not perfect. Both in the sort of sustainability credentials, we're processing them, we're using a lot of energy to extract highly refined proteins, and that's the basis for a lot of the plant-based foods that exist today. And I think we need to continue to invest to keep making them better, also in that regard, to make them healthier, to make them more sustainable, cleaner labels, to appeal to a broader range of consumers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Liz and Jos.
You're welcome.
Okay, we've just spoken with Liz and Jos, and now we're going to speak with Marcel and with Klaas-Jan. Marcel, could you please introduce yourself and your company?
Yes, of course. Marcel van Vaart speaking. I'm the Business Development Manager Protein for Consum. And Consum is a corporation of around 9,000 farmers in the Netherlands. And we grow a lot of crops, for example, sugar beet, potatoes, chicory, and lots of fruit. And we are extremely active in making ingredients out of those crops and end products. Also, and already for decades, we work hard on valorizing all the side streams. And now with a special attention to also valorizing proteins from side streams. And I think that's why this challenge is extremely relevant for us.
Thank you. Klaas-Jan?
Hello, good day. My name is Klaas-Jan Zuidam. I'm a lead scientist plant protein at Unilever R&D in Wageningen. Unilever is one of the biggest food companies in the world. You may know our brands. Last decade, I have led the research on soy beverages, soybean extraction for our brand at that time in Latin America. My team has developed vegan ice creams technologies, like the technology behind the vegan Magnum, the non-dairy Ben & Jerry's. And lately, I'm leading a research project in the area of meat analog structuring.
Thank you for introducing yourselves. And now we're going to show you a video of our experts because we've asked them a statement about the future of our food, how our plates will look like in the future. Let's have a look.
I believe that the future of the protein transition will be with more resources and more sustainable resources of protein for food and non-food applications. The reason why it is important that this takes place is that the way we produce at the moment proteins is not necessarily the most efficient way. So while animals produce high quality proteins, there are other resources that can produce in the future equal quality, but in a more sustainable way, thus using less resources. I think also that in the future the protein transition will imply use of many different resources, plants, animal, microbial, etc.
I think it's important because if we keep consuming meat or food in general as we do now, we will not be able to do that for the rest of the world in the coming years. So I think we have two choices. Either we all start to consume less so that we kind of solve the food problem in this way. But if we want to keep our lifestyle the way that we do, I don't think that we have any other choice in really going more towards a plant-based diet and that we basically then need the protein transition in order to keep living the way we do.
They think that if we want to still eat animal proteins, that we have to eat less in the future. And also that if we want to eat proteins, that we have to diversify our diet. How do you think about it, Klaas-Jan?
Yeah, I think we agree with that. We believe it needs to be more in balance. So more plant proteins, more plant ingredients, and less animal-derived ingredients. Lately, we have also invested a lot in this area. And so we have a new building in the R&D Innovation Center in Wageningen at the campus, the university. So we really believe that this is the future. It's a big challenge, of course, to provide enough proteins for the 9 billion people in the world. But we fully agree with this.
And Marcel?
Yes, we also fully agree with this. And actually, we're also very active with that. And maybe it's nice to give an example here. One of our crops is the sugar beet, where for I think 120 years we are already extracting sugar from. But we also do a lot with the side streams, so we make things like fibers, fertilizers, biogas for our trucks to drive on. But we also found out that actually the leaves that are being cut off the sugar beet that normally remain on the land, there's still a lot of protein in them. And to be a bit more precise, you can get as much protein from as you get from a hectare of soy. And we have now set up a project where we are isolating those proteins with also very special characteristics from those leaves. And we are doing this, of course, from our own side stream, our super beet leaves. But if you think about all the green leaves that are around us on the planet, this could be one of the most abundant protein sources that there is on this world. So we're very active in making this happen. This could be a great source, besides, of course, all the other plant sources we have and all the alternatives that are being developed in microorganisms and what you got. So we're very much agree with that.
Okay. And Klaas-Jan, why do you find it so important, this transition?
It's important because I think plant proteins are much more sustainable, and that is needed for the planet. We have to meet certain sustainable development goals, as also said by the United Nations. Unilever have committed to halve the greenhouse gas per consumer use of our products across the whole life cycle by 2030. And we believe that plant proteins can play a role there by replacing, for instance, milk proteins by plant proteins in our non-dairy ice creams like vegan Magnum, Cornetto Veggie. And that's a big challenge. It's not as easy as it sounds. And we also announced lately that we want to have global sales target for around 1 billion euros in 5 or 7 years. So we really go for it. We think it's very important.
But normally when you take something out of a product, for example, you make it lower fat, then you have to add something else, no?
That is true, because consumers don't want to compromise on taste. And so that's a big challenge to make sure that products are as tasty as they are used to. So it sounds very easy to, for instance, to replace milk proteins by plant proteins. So my team has done that for instance, vegan Magnum and the non-dairy Ben & Jerry's. But it took us several years to do the reformulation. And if you now try this, you will not hardly see any difference or taste any difference between the vegan Magnum and the dairy equivalent. So that was very successful, but it took us a couple of years. You need to completely reformulate it.
Okay, so we have to try it. And Marcel, how important do you find the transition to proteins?
Yeah, I think that the transition to the plant protein is extremely relevant. I think the one is, of course, the planet, the climate change that we need to stop, but like Jan was also telling about. I think also the whole element of animal welfare, I think that's a really important item. And also there's lots of evidence that it also can have a huge positive impact on your personal health, to have more plant-based diet. So there's many reasons to go there. And I think also from a coaching point of view, I think the question is also, can we sort of allow us not to do this? I think we must do it because we have this access to the crops. We are really technological driven, so we can make this, and we have a long history of also doing these type of things. And we must enter this. And we're not, I just told you about the protein from the beef, but we're going much broader. We're building a whole portfolio of plant proteins, and this is really sort of for us a new business for the future, where we really want to be part of. We really want to be part of the protein transition.
And how do you think about the nutrients that you're missing normally? Because when you have animal proteins, there you've got more or different nutrients than you have in plant proteins. How are you going to solve that problem?
Yeah, there's of course one important element. It's the vitamin B12, and there's another element of iron where you have to be. Now you see that the current products on the market, the end products, and certainly Unilever is also doing that. Often these components are added to the product. And there's also sort of alternative protein solutions, and especially in the area of fermentation, where these components are also produced while you are producing the protein. So there's more than only plants. So I think there's lots of opportunity to solve these items, and we shouldn't see that as a huge problem. It's something we just need to take care of, and need to make sure that we get enough of those nutrients in our diet.
Okay. Do you think that as well?
Yeah, I agree. Actually, the healthiest diet that we know of is a balanced diet. And I think the point is that our diet now has gotten a little bit out of balance. We don't have the ratio of plants and animal consumption that we'd like to have. We're collectively not eating our fruits and vegetables still, unfortunately. We should be eating more whole grains and we should be eating more legumes. And bringing that back in balance will be beneficial for our health. And for the vast majority of people who don't choose to become vegan, but choose to just make a small shift toward more plant-based than they're currently eating, those kind of nutrient deficiencies are absolutely not going to be a problem in the the rebalancing.
Okay, so you think that we also will still be needing animal proteins as well?
I think for the vast majority of consumers, we see that they're choosing to do this, to see this as a kind of rebalancing, to eat a little bit more flexitarian rather than to go all the way to eating a vegan diet. And there's an argument to be made that animals are an important part of the most sustainable system because we can feed animals things that we as humans can't eat.
Mm-hmm.
So we do need a certain amount of animals in our food system to keep the whole thing sort of running and to use all of the resources that we have. I think it's just about rebalancing, and that's what I hear from Marcel and Klaas-Jan as well. I think that's a sort of shared goal.
Okay. Thank you very much, Marcel and Klaas-Jan, for your time. And see you in the next episode.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much, Stacy, for being here today with me. It was an honor to have you.
My pleasure.
And I hope to see you in the next episode.